welcome to the first gameplay video for Ground Gaming HD. We're going to start off in Arrival against the Sultan Abdul in Stronghold Crusader HD, and very quickly just to go over the gameplay options, we have the speed setting at 50 just to make sure that we have a little bit of breathing space, but it's also not too quick to actually be able to enjoy the game itself. So obviously going to start out with building the marketplace, always most important, and obviously working with the wood. Not only does that obviously clear the farmland for us fairly quickly, but it then enables us to get wood, which is going to be absolutely crucial at the start, and we don't really want to be wasting as much money as possible on getting wood. So it's a good investment really. And the first thing we're going to start doing is thinking about our food. The whole chain, in terms of working en masse, it's better to have fewer farms, or it's easier to at least to manage fewer farms, but then have more food in terms of bread. Those are the easiest ways to do it. And that involves obviously the chain, which goes from the wheat to the mill, to the bakery, and then obviously into your granary. So that's the kind of thinking behind that. But at the same time, we need to think about money, and we need to think about economy and weapons to start building an army, of course. So we've already built our first, I guess, stone plaza, I can't remember what it's called. And then we've also started building some armories in order to start actually building, or an armory, and with some barracks, obviously, to start actually building our army up. The most important thing to think about at this stage is again kind of defensive, and the person, our enemy Sultan Abdul, he often uses fire to kind of get an early start on you. So it's important to kind of block off directional attacks that he could have going fairly quickly. So that's exactly what we're doing here. We're blocking things off straight away, and then getting our archers in position so that they can kind of start to take over the surrounding area. But yeah, we obviously want to make sure that our citizens and our army eventually can then go through. And it's always important to put the fireplace on top as well, for wherever your archers are. And if they're on walls, you always want to make sure that you make sure that you actually fill those, so your damage is going to be increased, obviously. And this is slightly more for aesthetics. It doesn't really matter at this point. And I mean, we know that this level is pretty straightforward, so that's just for aesthetics, adding an extra layer to our wall. But depending on who we play against in future episodes, it's going to be a bit more of a challenge. Obviously, the army's going to attack walls. They're going to be catapults. They're going to be loads of other things we're going to be fighting against, but not too much of a problem against Sultan Abdul. Here we're going back onto our economy, wanting to make sure that we have enough brick, not really to build walls because we could buy that out. That's not too much of an issue because of the river. Obviously the enemy can't get to us in any way, shape or form apart from these two exits, as it were, two entrances, as it were, right at the top and then right at the bottom. So all we're doing with these bricks, these are basically to try and fill up our economy by selling, and with the cows and all that, transporting it to, it's quite an easy way to make a lot of money really quickly. In this case, obviously we have it very close up to our keep, which makes it very easy. And yeah, just keeping an eye as well on our enemy. Nothing too crazy really in terms of what's happening so far. There's you would expect an earlier attack, but what they haven't really done in this first one is kind of make it relatively easy. So again, we're just kind of copying what we've done down at the bottom, to the southern side. Adding a few walls, and then you should hear
the keep is enclosed.
The keep is enclosed. And that is exactly for that purpose. It's good to know that. And again, let's make sure that we get our archers in a slightly more opportune moment. And this is really the early attacks that I was talking about, where you have these archers and they can quickly take out, because actually the enemy archers are actually more powerful on a one-on-one battle against my own archers, the default archers, so the longbow archers. So it's really important to make sure that you can actually get some sort of advantage, and that's why I used my pikemen to kind of slaughter that first small wave off. And so from now on, I think we're going to be able to hopefully control the rest of this map. We need to make sure that we still have control in terms of resources, making sure that the enemy doesn't have access to resources, if possible. If there's anything that we can do to limit that, then that's great. But for now, it's still a case of really focusing on our own food supply. That's the thing that is most likely to cause problems in the medium term. That's not having a good food supply in our own. But we have farmland, we have a mill, we have our bakeries, and it's not going to be too complicated to kind of keep that going for the next few minutes before we start to build up our army. We have a few messages obviously coming through from the Sultan, which is always nice to see. It's a nice bit of detail that they created for this game. I think it adds a bit more depth to the game itself, which is nice to see. In the meantime, we're just going to carry on building up our population, which is in turn going to allow us to build our army. And it's always fun. It depends how you want to do this. I'm kind of going with these positive reinforcements in terms of the actual abilities. So you can do this in two ways. You can put really positive things like statues and gardens and all this sort of stuff, or you can go a more negative route, which is the kind of torture, and which is what the enemy usually ends up doing. And essentially, the sole purpose of this is to, well, there's two reasons for this. First of all, so you can get a stronger army. So when you then highlight your army, you can see there's a little there's a little icon, a little square on top of their health bar, and that determines their kind of additional strength. So a few more of these will basically help that. And now that I select them, you can see they've got two little dots on top of there. It's very small to see, but they do have two little dots, which means they are a bit stronger than what they would have been without these gardens. And the second reason is also so these gardens essentially help out with the actual happiness of the population, and that technically means that even if you have, say, not as good food, or you have higher taxes, for example, then that is actually something that's really not that much of an issue because your population's happy. Again, this is too quick of a game to really be able to determine how important those things are. But with that out of the way, we can now start to focus our efforts on attacking and building up an army. Now, obviously, keeping an eye on our money as well. We have about 1,000 coins. Our defences are strong. We have plenty of resources coming in. We've got plenty of money that will be coming in. So we're in complete control of this game as things currently stand. Again, just wanting to build up. And I actually wanted to add a bit more detail to these, making nice patterns. Really doesn't matter, obviously, but you know, just for the sake of aesthetics, it's a nice little bonus. And that's something I want to try to maintain during this series. And now we start to see the benefits of all the resources that we've been collecting that we can start to sell, which is always good. The iron mine is really, obviously, one of the highest selling items. In terms of raw material, it is the highest selling item, if I'm not mistaken. And so it's great if you can, and if you have the stability to build as many of these as possible. Just need to make sure that when you build these out, don't block off your own men from your own workers from actually getting to the building. It can be very easy to do that in those sort of tight places, especially if there's a lot of resources. It's quite easy to kind of block things in. So just keep that in mind as well. But as we can see, it's all done really not able to kind of expand because we've got this aerial, or should I say archery suppression on his workers, so it's near impossible for him to start expanding as far as his army goes. As far as his farming is probably the biggest thing, so he can't get food and so he has to spend money on food. I think the AI does get a bit of an advantage actually when they don't have that, but that's just a detail really. Doesn't matter too much. There is a resource in the bottom left corner of the map actually, I think. So technically, if the AI was a bit more clever, it could actually expand and build up a lot more of those to be able to sell the resources. But Not something decided.
Feel the
What I'm doing now is starting to build up an army. So this is what our attacking army is going to be. So the ballistas are really good for any attacking some bigger kind of troops, as it were. They're not particularly effective against archers just because they're so slow at reloading, but if you do have the opportunity to use your ballistas, to make some ballistas, if you've got the money for it, the engineers, it does take a bit of time and effort, but it is worth it if there's some sort of counter-attack, which is often what the enemy ends up doing. And all that means is because they're walking straight towards you and they're walking really slow, if you have a handful of ballistas, they're going to take them out. As long as there's some sort of support, you can't just send out a bunch of ballistas. And what I wanted to do I don't know if I'm going to carry this on or not, but in these attacks, I'm using the pikeman and archery combination. We'll probably expand on that eventually, but it'll be a kind of a main army, and that's because the pikemen are actually really strong in terms of their range of different things that they can do. So they can make moats. They can they're not too expensive. I think they're 20 a piece to build, to recruit.
A message from the Sultan.
And yeah, we'll probably have to adapt if we don't have enough iron in other maps where we don't have a natural resource of iron. But in the case that we do, then it's going to be quite easy to build this sort of army up.
Your lordship.
And so what I started to do here is prepare the army for the final attack, which hopefully will be strong enough. But I just wanted to make sure that I had enough men to eventually just end it. Make sure that we would actually be able to win completely.
Head in there now.
And so that's what we're doing now. Again, there is nothing really going on, but it's always nice to make sure that there is a clear dominance.
Sorry, sir.
And it's at this stage that we start to see how ineffective the AI really is in terms of being able to do anything when you start to attack. And that's fine. It would be nice if there was something that they could do, especially when they have unlimited resources at their disposal. It's not like this, they didn't have that, but regardless, this is the first level. This is meant to be straightforward. So that's all good. We're just going to try and move things forward now. Getting the archers, again, if you just right click on the actual troops that you've selected, then it'll actually deselect them, so it's nice to select the whole area. And we're also going to kind of bring a bit of an attack from the north, just in case there is a few archers again that are going to kill our pikemen attacking down. So we just want to kind of remove that threat if there is. So we're just going to use some of our archers that have been defending so far in the game. Last few archers that we're going to get involved in this. We have more than enough troops here to completely win. It's not going to be a problem at all, and that's when we're going to start to. As the troops move forward, we can continuously sell items. Again, this is in the event, say for example you're fighting against two enemies, it is good to have a second wave, at least to prepare for. There could be a second enemy that's attacking you as you attack another enemy. You need to keep in mind, because all their workers have now gone back. So nothing much is going to be happening here. We have our archers, we have our pikemen, we have our engineers who've made the archery shields. I need to check they're actually cool, but that's going to be good. Again, if we're not going to be using archers on horses, we're just going to be using the Crusader armies, as it were, then this is the better combination, because your archers are going to last a long time, or longer than they would obviously without the. They are a bit slow if you move them as a unit. They are a bit slower, but it's probably worth it based on the health or the extra time that they get before getting killed by the enemy. So here we go. Here's our final attack with our pikemen. Easiest thing to do is obviously just knock down one of the towers or one of the gates, get the way through, head straight over towards the keep. Don't need to worry about anything else. There's more than enough. Bringing the army from the top, why not? We've already won. But there we go. That's nice straightforward build and win for us in this first game. So thanks for watching. We're going to just try to build up this series and see how it goes. If you're interested in, if you have any questions, then feel free to add in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe, all that sort of stuff, and we'll see you next time.
Victory!